tonight we've got a really special treat for you. We have a guest speaker, Mr. Kaelob Mecum, and he's going to love that I called him Mr. He is an amazing young man. His beautiful wife, Kirsten, is here with us as well. He is a Marine, and he has an incredible testimony, incredible story, some places that he's been and has triumphed through those, and I know you're going to appreciate hearing from him. Can we give a warm Freedom Night welcome to Kaelob Mecum?
Oh, man. Yeah, come on. Wow. Whew. So I didn't know how well you guys were going to respond, so to make myself feel better, I actually had them put an applause in the track before I got out here. So, man, it is a blessing to be out here in front of a crowd of 10,000 people at Freedom Night. I don't know how you all fit in this room. Don't look around, all right? Some of you guys are already like, 1, 2. The ones who weren't quite as good at math were like, 1, 2, 3. There's like half that many people in here. Just kidding. I wanted to go ahead and start this with a prayer. I just wanted to kind of anoint this message. So if we could all bow our heads and close our eyes, please. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this night. Thank you for this group of people here who've come seeking you, Lord, who've come seeking your guidance. And we pray that this message is anointed, that the weight that some of us are carrying on our shoulders may lift, that the burdens may be lifted, that they come to know you not just on a Sunday night or Sunday morning, Saturday, but every day of the week, every minute of the day, and everything that they do. In your heavenly name I pray, amen. All right, well, that took 3 minutes, and that was supposed to take 30 minutes, so I don't even have anything written on this. That's all blank, so I guess I'm winging it. Like she said, I'm a Marine. Some of you are looking at me. I came out in skinny jeans, and you're like, that guy's not a Marine. Marines don't wear skinny jeans. Well, obviously you don't know that many Marines. Or you don't know me because I'm probably the only one who wears skinny jeans. I got out of active duty in 2015. I was a ammo tech, which means I counted bullets. But if anybody asks me, I tell them that I worked in ordnance and explosives, and I did all sorts of cool stuff, which is half true, but not really true at all, because I was in a building that was dark, and I was like, 1, 5, 5, 6, 2, 5, 5, 6, 3, 5, 5, 6. I'm not important at all, so not that cool, but I was a Marine, still am, I guess, always a Marine, once a Marine. I have a few things to talk to you guys about, and when I came here, I've been here before a couple times, and I gave a couple different messages about like actual practical biblical teachings, and I started to think about how there's a lot of power in a story, and there's a lot of power in a testimony. Every single person in this room has some sort of story, right? You guys are here because of some reason, and because of the circumstances of this room. A lot of people are here because of hardship, struggle, different things like that. So I wanted to share some of my story, if you guys don't mind. I'm going to go back a little bit. I'll try to make it as fast as possible. I don't want anybody to get too bored. I'm going to trip on that, I promise. So I was born 26 years ago, almost 27. I'm almost coming in my late 20s, and it's freaking me out a little bit. My wife keeps telling me I'm like 35, so thank you for that. So 1990, my mom is a single teenage mom. I got pregnant while she was in high school. My dad, as soon as he found out that she was pregnant with me, he flew away. Nobody knew where he went. He disappeared. And my mom had me. She wasn't really ready to be a mom yet. So she got in a little bit of trouble with the law, and they gave her a decision. They said, Chanel, you're either going to go to the military or you're going to go to prison. And she said, I think I'm going to take the military. But that kind of left me, little baby Kaelob, in a weird position, so I bounced from house to house, grandparent to grandparent, aunt to uncle, different people like that most of my life, not really having any roots. And then around 6 years old, I think I was in the first grade, she came back from the military. She decided she wanted to take care of me again, and she reconnected with my father. She wanted to give me a home. She wanted to give me a family with my real dad. Not some stand-in or anything like that. She wanted to give me a real family, so kudos to her. So I moved in with him when I was 6 years old, and on the surface of everything, I was really excited. I had my family again. I wasn't the weird little kid without a dad anymore. But my dad, very quickly, it became apparent that he was heavily addicted to drugs and very abusive. So at first, the abuse started with my mom. It was, I'm not going to go into the details with it, but if you know the stories, you know what I'm going to say or what I'm thinking right now. But it was something that a 6-year-old is having to see, every day. And eventually, the abuse extended to me. And over the years, eventually, I became a human ashtray, something that he could put his cigarettes out on. I was a pretty sensitive kid, so I cried a lot. So to make me tougher, he would take a file to my knuckles until it looked like I was a fighter. So I'd have big scabs, so all the kids would think I was tough. And then eventually, I became a punching bag. So as you can see, kind of being without a dad was kind of the more enticing option to me. Around 8 and a half, I walked home from school. And I walked inside my house, and I heard something coming from the bathroom. Sorry, and I was like, "That's really weird." It's like somebody's struggling, something's happening. So I walk into the bathroom, and I'm used to abuse, so I don't know if there's like a fight going on or what. But I walk in the bathroom, and on the floor, there's a tie off, there's a needle, there's my dad in the bathtub, there's my mom trying to put little empty ice cube trays in the bath to bring him back. He was overdosing, stuff coming out of his mouth, shaking. I'll never forget what I saw. I'll never forget what I looked at him, and I was really sad. I should have been mad. I was like, "Man, I'm tired of you beating me up. I'm tired of you waking me up in the middle of the night and hitting me. I should want you to die, but I didn't." I was sad, and my mom looked at me. Years later, she told me that she was going to let him die. She was trying to get an escape, and that was how we were going to do it. But she saw me, so because she saw me, she didn't want me to see my dad die of an overdose. I got to give my dad a little bit of credit because when he wasn't high, he was a pretty good guy. He had a capacity for great compassion sometimes. He had a beautiful singing voice. So if any of you guys go to church here, you know that I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a pastor by any means. I'm a worshiper, so I like to sing. I like to write songs. That's how I portray my belief in the gospel. So as you can see my hand shaking up here, I'm not much of a public speaker. He had a beautiful singing voice, so I feel like I probably got a little bit of it from him. So I got to give him a little bit of credit, but when he was high, he wasn't the same person. He wasn't my dad. He was nobody's dad. He was barely a person at all, because what kind of person takes their kid out to the country and says, "If you don't tell me something about your mom that she's done wrong, I'm going to kill you right here"? Who does that, right? I'm not trying to get any sympathy, by the way. I'm just kind of letting you guys know. So basically, about 2 months after this happened, he was successfully revived. Not appreciative, obviously, that my mom had saved his life. But one night, he was just on an exceptional high. He was tripping a little bit, and he pulled out a gun. We didn't even know he had a gun. And he pointed at my mom, and my mom, scared for her life, she grabbed me, she pulled me across the bed, and she put me in front of her, and she wrapped me up like this. And some of you are thinking, "Man, what the heck, Mom? What are you doing?" Now I'm thinking, "What are you doing, man?" But she knew he wouldn't shoot me. He wasn't gonna pull the trigger on his son. So I was there. It was about midnight when he pulled it, and it was about 7 a.m. before he put the gun down. And so for 7 hours, I'm an 8-year-old little boy looking down the barrel of my dad's gun, watching his face, his lifeless eyes, because he's not him anymore. He's high, he's tripped out. And there gets to be a point on those kind of things where you're like, "Man, I'm not really here anymore." You kind of leave your body. So I almost was outside of my body looking down at little Kaelob like, "Oh man, it's okay. Eventually it's gonna be all right," talking myself down. So he came down from his high, obviously broke down, cried. He knew he was wrong, but he didn't realize it while he was high. It took him sobering up. And so the next night, in the middle of the night, my mom tapped me on the shoulder. She said, "Come on, let's go." I got out of bed. I was like, "Where are we going?" I'm like, I have exceptional dirt in my eyes when I wake up in the morning, or sand. My wife can attest to that. And I don't check it when I go to work, so people come up and talk to me, and I got like 5 layers of sand I'm like getting it all out of my eyes, and she has a bag already packed for me, and we get in her car, and we drive to Kansas. We lived in Colorado at the time. It was the middle of the night, just left. I didn't even know what was going on, but I wasn't mad. And she had apparently been planning this for a while, but that was the last straw. We ended up at this little house that she already had a lease agreement for. We moved all of our stuff in, and everything was really cool. It was just me and my mom for about 2 months. And then somebody knocked on the door one day, and I opened the door, and it was Joel Smith. That's my dad's name, by the way. Terrified. I was like, oh, man, I'm in trouble. I shouldn't have gotten that car. But he acted like nothing had ever happened. You know, it was really kind of creepy in retrospect. Walked in the house, just sat down on the couch, turned on the TV, and waited for my mom to get home. She freaked out, but she kind of tried to act normal too, because she didn't want anything crazy to happen. She immediately got a restraining order against him, and they removed him. And he snuck back into the house a few weeks later, and he took bleach to every part of the house. The furniture, the beds, the clothes, everything that he could, he put bleach on it. And ruined our entire collection of anything that we had. So, stole all of her money out of the dresser. So we had absolutely nothing. She didn't have a job yet. So we moved to a homeless shelter in town where they would have a lock on the door that only certain people could get in. They got a camera at the door so they know when someone's coming. So we were kind of afraid, we were on the run. And we moved into this homeless shelter, and we were homeless. It was kind of crazy. A lot of people think, people who are in ministry, they probably had it really easy their whole life, Well, it's actually not true. A lot of people in ministry have dealt with a lot of stuff. I remember being in that homeless shelter. They would bring these really big black trash bags, and they would have clothes in it, and all the kids would pick out what clothes they wanted. And they had, they never had the cool clothes, so all the kids that were cool at school, that had all the, Aeropostale and all that stuff, they never had that stuff, but they had, Fila, which is kind of cool now, I guess, but at the time it wasn't. So I remember picking out all those clothes and everything. And I was thinking, I was sitting in bed. I was in a bunk bed. Me and my mom were both in a bunk bed. I was in the bottom bunk. She was in the top bunk. And I was sitting in bed looking at the top of the bed. And I was thinking to myself, at this time, I was probably 8.5, 9 years old. I think there's a God, but I'm not sure why I'm homeless right now. Because I don't think that he would let me be homeless because he loves me, right? When you're going to church, when you're in Sunday school as a kid, everyone says Jesus loves you. Even the song, Jesus loves me, this I know. I couldn't figure out why I was sleeping in that bed every night. A little while after that, she kind of got on her feet again, so we moved out of the homeless shelter. We spent about a year there. We had a house in Section 8 housing. She paid $12 a month for rent. It was an all-concrete, apartment complex and, paper-thin walls. We had, a few things of furniture that people had donated to us. And it's kind of funny because I always tell this part of the story. My wife, she always wonders why I like to sing soulfully or why I like R&B kind of stuff. And she's like, man, what influenced that? And it was actually because in my neighborhood, I was the only white kid. The only one. So that's kind of funny. But it actually at first sucked really bad. I can say sucked up here, right? I said it twice. Dang. All right. Anyway. So let me get a drink real quick. So I moved into this neighborhood, and all my friends, I made some friends, right away. The first friend I made, his name was Jeff. He's been my best friend since the 4th grade. He's still alive. He's half African-American, half Hispanic, and he really was cool with me because the black kids in our neighborhood didn't like him because he was half Hispanic, and the Hispanic kids didn't like him because he was half African-American. So he's like, man, that white kid, they hate him more than they hate me, so we're friends now. So he was an amazing guy, He became my friend right out the gate. But the thing that happened was a lot of the kids would see the white kid, and they're like, man, that's the kid. We're going to pick on that kid. So a lot of bullying, a lot of fighting. And like I said, I was a sensitive kid. I'd gotten beat up by my dad, but I hadn't gotten beat up by multiple people at once before. So that happened pretty consistently until one day, Jeff's dad signed him up for karate. Signed him up for karate class. And I couldn't afford it. I asked my mom, I was like, Mom, can I please go to karate? Can I please learn how to fight these kids that are picking on me? And she said, I'm sorry, I can't afford it. I can barely afford $12 for rent. So Jeff would go to karate every day of the week, and then after he got out of karate, I would go over to his house, and in his front yard, he would teach me how to fight. And he would keep teaching me how to fight, and he would keep teaching me how to fight. I started to like it, and then I was like, all right, kids, let's go. So I grew up in this neighborhood, and I started off getting my butt whooped, and then a little while later, I started whooping people. So don't deny the fact that karate can teach. All right, karate kids can fight. Have you seen the movie? It's real. Just kidding. So typically that's sort of where I started there. Well, the turning point of that, my life kind of started turning in a good way. I had good friends. I had my friend Jeff. I had a few other friends. And then my friend Dimitri, he wanted to come over one day. He said, hey, man, do you care if I come over after school? And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. What are we going to do? He's like, we could play PlayStation or something. I was like, I don't got a PlayStation. And he's like, I'll bring my PlayStation. I was like, tight, I'm poor. And so he brought his PlayStation over, and then he was being really weird the whole time. He's walking in, he's like being like awkward. If looking back on it now, if I had seen that kid, the way he was acting, I'd probably been like, dude, don't let that guy in your house. So I was faced this way, saying something to him, and he was behind me, and then I turned around, and all of a sudden something really hurt in my chest. And I was like, man, what? And I looked down, and he had stabbed me in my chest. And I didn't know what to say to him. I didn't even understand why it was happening. I found out later that Dimitri was trying to be a part of a gang, and that gang wanted him to kill the white kid. That was how he was going to get into the gang. We were 12 years old, but he was so scared when he stabbed me. He was so nervous that when I turned around, instead of stabbing in between my rib cage, he stabbed up into my chest muscle. So I still have a reminder on my chest, about 2 inches wide, of when a kid wanted to get into a gang, and the reason that I was targeted was because I was white. He ran away, and I obviously went to the hospital, but you don't snitch on people. I'm not going to tell them who it was. I'm not going to tell the authorities that somebody that I know the name of stabbed me, because all the kids, or all the, they're all kids in this gang, and they're all 16, 17 years old, maybe one like 25-year-old guy, but all those guys, as soon as I give up the name of Dimitri, who actually did stab me, that whole gang is probably going to find me, so I wasn't going to say anything. So I remember a couple days later, bandage on my chest, sitting on my bed, looking at my ceiling, hearing the people argue in the apartment next to me because the walls are about as thin as cardboard. I know that you're supposed to love me, but how come I got stabbed? How come I'm sleeping in this bed in this neighborhood? I kept remember asking. There's just different situations where I kept asking. I was like, what's going on, man? So fast forward a little bit. I'm not going to keep giving you guys the runaround on my whole life, but that kind of continued on into high school. And then finally, I tried really hard to get good grades in high school so I could get out. I didn't go to school very often. I really like to sleep in. I love to sleep, ask my wife. But I did get good grades. And eventually I left my hometown and went to college in Kansas State University, which was a complete and total culture shock because I wasn't the only white kid anymore. So it was kind of weird because all my friends were not white. And while I was there, I brought Jeff with me. Jeff went to college for a little while, too, with me there. And I went to school for 4 years there. And one of the years of college, I met a girl, and she seemed like a really good girl, and I fell in love with her. And we were together for a few years. And then when I was done with college, I decided I'm going to join the Marine Corps because I've always wanted to do something that would make people proud of me, that would make something I could do and I could finish, and then I could someday see my dad and be like, you know what, that's what I became in spite of you. And a Marine was always something that I thought was like one of the coolest possible things you could do. So I joined the Marine Corps, and I was gone for a while. I was gone for about 9 months. I couldn't see her. And I was so excited to come back. But a part of me while I was gone sort of started fading away because she started being different. Stopped texting me as much, stopped sending letters as much. The relationship was kind of really awkward. I was really worried. And so when I knew something was wrong months before I came back, but when I finally came back, I was in the airport leaving Richmond, Virginia. That's where I ended up being stationed. And I wanted to get on a plane so bad. I knew I needed to get home because I needed to make something right. I needed to get home. That's what I kept telling myself. I was like, I just need to get home. I didn't say Kansas. I said, I just need to get home. I just need to get back. The flights were delayed, and I wasn't going to be able to get on that flight until the next day. And something about that seems so wrong. It's like, that's not right. I need to get home now. I need to get back to where I need to be, where I'm supposed to be right now. And I walked down this escalator, and I looked to the left, and there was this little chapel. There were like 2 rows of seats in it. And at the front of it was an altar. And I came up to one side of it, and I got down on my knees. And I wasn't very much a Christian. I kind of believed in God, but I was upset with him because all these things kept happening in my life, and I couldn't imagine how he would love me, but I thought, I'm going to give you a shot real quick. And I got on my knees, and I put my head down, my hands on my head, and this is the only way I knew how to pray. And I said, God, I know we've got a lot of differences. I know we've got a lot of things that we disagree on. But if you could just get me home now. If you could just take me home, I promise I will live a life for you. And I just sat there in silence because I didn't know what else to say. I have this preconceived thought that when you pray, that it's like an answering machine. So you call the God hotline, and you, right? You're like, hey, God, whenever you get a little bit of time, I really want the Broncos to win the Super Bowl this year. Just whenever you check this, thank you. But you need to do it before Sunday, please. Just kidding. So that's kind of how I thought prayer was. That's how I thought it worked. But I got down on my knees, and I prayed for that. And then this is going to sound ridiculous because everyone's like, man, everybody's got those miracle stories. I walked out, and I looked at that little board that tells you all the flights, delays, what time they're leaving, and it didn't say delayed anymore. It said on time. And I was like, what? That's tight, man. So I went up to my friends who they said, you know what, we're going to just stay in the USO tonight. We're not even going to try to get on that flight because we have a feeling it's going to get delayed anyway again. So we're not going to get our hopes up. We're just going to stay here. You should stay with us. And I said, no, I got to go. I've got to get on that plane. So I got on the plane. And some of you guys know, some of you don't. My uncle is the pastor of this church. And I called him and I said, hey, I've got this layover in Cincinnati. I don't think I'm going to have enough time to see you, but if I do, if you want to meet me at the airport, you can. He's like, how long is your layover? I was like, 30 minutes. He said, there's no way. There's no way. I'm not going to be able to get in there and see you. They're not going to let me in without like a pass or anything. You're not going to be able to get out and get back in time. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I got to get on this flight anyway. Maybe sometime I'll see you in Cincinnati. And he's like, yeah, man, for sure. Let me know if you need anything at all. And so I get on the flight, and everything's going good. It's all on time. And then about 20 minutes before I'm supposed to get to Cincinnati to make my connecting flight to Kansas City, the storm picks up again. The same storm that had delayed the flight earlier. And we started hitting turbulence. And I was like, man, this can't be happening. I was supposed to be able to get home. It said on time. And right as we were about to get into the Cincinnati airport, the captain came over the intercom and he said, we're going to have to circle it a few times because the way that the wind is right now, if we try to land, it's not going to be a good landing. So we're going to circle the airport a few times and try to get a better landing. So we circle it, I don't know how many times. I've always told my wife if I ever become a preacher and I need to say some like really like biblical things, I'll be like, it's circled 7 times. 7 times. But I don't know how many it was, to be honest. And finally we landed, and I landed right there, and I watched the flight to Kansas leave right in front of me. I was like, all right, what the heck? I prayed, and then you made it not delayed, and then I got here, and then it left. What are you doing? So I got out and I asked the lady at the counter, I said, hey, what is the very soonest I can get to Kansas? And she said, I'm really sorry about that delay. We have a flight at 8:30 in the morning, which didn't sound good. We have a flight at noon, and we have another flight at 8:30 p.m., so tomorrow night. But then all of a sudden, when she said that to me, everything about that rush of needing to get home, that like certainty, like I have to leave right now, it all left me. It was really weird. And I thought, you know what, honestly, just do 8:30. Just do it 8:30 tomorrow. Give me 24 hours. I have some family here, so I don't need a hotel or anything. I'll call them and see what happens. So I got back on my cell phone, called my uncle. He's like, did you make it home all right? And I was like, actually, man, I'm sitting in the Cincinnati airport right now. I got a 24-hour layover. Do you want to hang out with me? And he said, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And he hung up. That's all he said. I was like, rude. That's all you're going to say to me? Just kidding. He said other stuff, but. So he drives out. He comes and picks me up. First thing he does, he says, do you like steak? I was like, yes. Drives me out to Ruth's Chris, gets me a steak, greatest meal I've had in years. Don't look at the price on it. Scare me. And he talks to me about some stuff, and I kind of let him know the situation that's going on between me. And I forgot to mention this, but that girl was my fiance at the time. I started to kind of tell him, man, it's been really weird. Things have been really weird. She's been saying really weird things. It's been like a really weird disconnect. And he said, I don't want to be right about this, but she's cheating on you. And I said, I'm sorry, man. She's not cheating on me. She's great. She would never do that to me. I actually asked her, and she said she would never do that to me. You guys know where this is going, right? So he talks to me. He says, hey, look, man, I got this church here, and it's got an internship, and it's got all these people here who are really good people, the best people you're ever going to meet. And I think that if you just come and visit and surround yourself with these people, they'll start to work on your heart, and they can kind of help you out. And I said, I don't know if you know this about me, but I don't really have a very good relationship with God, because first of all, on my way here, I prayed to him, and he picked up the phone for like a second, and then he gave me the clear, and then I got here, and he decided to change his mind. I didn't say it like that. He's a pastor. He'd be like, no, I'm just kidding. So I hang out with him. He spends the next day with me. He just talks to me and loves me. And then I go home. I get on my flight. I go to Kansas. And when I get home, things are obviously weird. It's exactly the same in person as it had been on the phone. And I was like, this is weird. I don't know if I should say something, but her phone password changed, so something's up. Because I tried to play some Pandora music and couldn't get on it. That's awkward. And I see this banner come across the screen one night while we're watching Netflix. This is like the next night after I got home. And it says, hey, I really miss you. When can I see you again? Gabe. Who in here is named Gabe? Good. You're lucky. I got skinny jeans on, but I'm a Marine. I'll find you. So I was like, well, I'm going to pretend like I didn't see that. But I watched her put her password in, memorized it. So I've had excellent short-term memory at that time, but my wife can attest to it that I do not now. And that night while she was sleeping, ladies, don't be mad at me, I got into her phone, went to the text message, saw everything I didn't want to see, and then a little bit more. I even saw a picture of Gabe playing with my Great Dane Titus, and that's wrong. First of all, you do whatever you got to do, but don't mess with my dog. I'm still mad at Titus about it. He's on my bad list right now. I didn't feed him before I came here. I was like, you can wait till 8 p.m. because of Gabe. Just kidding, I didn't do that. You fed him, right? Good. All right. So, man, it scared me. Anyway, so really awkward, but I started to call my uncle. I said, hey, I have tears in my eyes, I'm crying. I'm devastated at this time. I said, hey, man, you were right. He just said, I'm sorry. No, I didn't want to be right, but I was right. I'm sorry. What I think you should do is I think you should grab a bag. I think you should grab the clothes that you need. I think you should grab your dog because that's messed up. Right? And you should get in a car. I got you a hotel in Kansas City that allows pets. Stay there for the night, and then you drive to Cincinnati. I just trusted him. So I started to get my stuff together. My bag, one of my sea bags, was still packed with kind of all my favorite clothes. So I was like, this is sort of convenient. Picked up the bag, grabbed my dog, was still mad at him, threw him in the car, threw my bag in the car, drove to Kansas City, stayed in the hotel for the night, drove to Cincinnati just to kind of get away, because if I'm being 100% honest, as calm and collected as I seem up here, I was probably going to kill somebody. And so my uncle knew that because he knew where I was raised, and he knew where he was raised in the same place, and he's like, man, we don't want to mess around with that. So I drove to Cincinnati, and I came here, and the very first day I was here was a Sunday, and I came to church, and I was blown away. And I'm not trying to sell this church to you or anything, but I was coming from somebody who was completely unchurched. I was like, what is this place? And how does that guy sing that good? Why do I feel weird right now? I didn't want to raise my hands. I used the excuse that I was like afraid of getting punched. I was like, I don't raise my hands because I don't want somebody to hit me. So like, you see all the worshiping hands up. I was like, I did this. It's like, I'll do this maybe, kind of like maybe here. So it kind of seemed like things were turning around, but I remember sleeping in his guest bed that night, looking at the ceiling, asking God, I said, if you love me so much, how come that happened? How come everything keeps going down? How come I can't hit just a little bit of good? And I didn't feel like I got a response. And about 2 months after I got here, my uncle, knowing how I was feeling, knowing that I was struggling with betrayal, heartache, he took me on a trip with him to Colorado. And so he's like, look, man, we're going to go climb a mountain. We're going to do something really manly, and you're going to feel better. We're going to go with our friends. And so we took a flight into Aspen. We drove out to this little trailhead with the owner of a gym, that her person's best friend and the best friend's brother. So it was the 5 of us. And we hiked in all day. It was the kind of hike that you need like the poles for, because it's like really weird terrain. So you're like, I was breathing really heavy even though I was a Marine, but they seemed to be fine, so I didn't want to pretend like I was the only one out of shape, so I was like really pushing through. And we finally got to the base of this mountain we were supposed to climb. And the mountain was called Capitol Peak. And a lot of people climb this mountain because it's just really crazy. It's not a really hard way to get up, but once you get up, there's a razor edge that you kind of scale across to get to the actual peak. And then once you summit it, it's like this really big accomplishment. And then you come back. Well, I started thinking the whole way up there, I was like, man, this is like really nice. This is really cool to be in nature, and I feel good kind of right now. I'm kind of distracted. And one of the guys I was with us, his name was Travis, he said, hey, I'm about to go over there to this mountain, this little mountainside, and I'm gonna boulder. And if nobody here knows what bouldering is, it's essentially free climbing where you don't have any harness or any gear or anything like that. You just climb up a little bit, but you're not really supposed to go higher than about 10 feet, maybe 20 if you're really, really daring. And we started climbing it, and his brother was with us, so it was the 3 of us. And about 10 feet up, his brother decided to go back down. He's like, you know what, this isn't for me. I'm going to go back to the camp. But me and Travis, we're kind of ridiculous. And if I'm being honest, I didn't really care if it was dangerous. I had been through enough hurtful things that I was kind of trying to test God out. I was like, you know what, I don't actually care if I die. I'm going to climb this mountain without gear. If I fall, okay. I fall. We start climbing. We get about 15, 20 feet up. And then we see a cave, like an empty cave. We're like, let's go explore that. That's about another 15, 20 feet up, so we keep climbing 15, 20 feet, and we get up there. Well, now we're looking back down, and the way down is a lot scarier than the way up. And we look at his brother, who's still kind of off in the distance. We're like, hey, how'd you get down? And he said, same way I got up. That's how you guys got to get down. But we're looking at it now. We're over 30 feet up, and we're just thinking, man, that doesn't sound good. Because at the base of this mountain, there's just rocks. pointy rocks, jagged rocks. There's just rocks. So we're thinking, if I fall from 30 feet, 100% chance I'm breaking something. Small chance that I'm probably going to die. So we look off to the side of the mountain, and if you kind of look, it looks like just a ways down, there's this nice little slope that you could probably just kind of slide down or walk down or crawl down, but it wasn't nearly as dangerous. It wasn't as up and down as where we were. So we start scaling the side of the mountain, trying to get to it. We made the decision together that that's where we were going to go. So we kept going. But as we're going, we have to climb a little bit. So we're climbing up while we're climbing over, Before we know it, we're like 100 feet up. And the point of the mountain where we are is starting to actually get a little more dangerous because there aren't a lot of places to rest anymore. We don't have any gear. So we don't have anything taking the weight off of our fingers, our forearms. If you've ever rock climbed or done anything like that, you know that your forearms just start to burn. We kept going. We're about 120 feet up, and we get to the place where we had seen was a nice little slope, and it was more up and down than where we had started. There's a science to the way that the light hits the side of a mountain actually causes an illusion. So you think that what's like this is actually like this. So the place where we are now, we can't even go back because we would have to climb down again in order to get over. So we look up, and it doesn't look so bad. We're thinking maybe if we just summit this, there will be an easier way down on the other side. I know we didn't learn our lesson the first time. So we started to climb up, and we're 200 feet up, we're 250 feet up, 275 feet up. And then we start branching off our paths because little rocks are starting to fall out from the grips of where we're grabbing them. So I would grab something, and it would just fall 250 feet to the ground. I still wasn't scared yet. And I remember Travis saying to me, he said, "Hey, how did you get to where you are now?" I said, "Be honest, man, I just kind of reached. I think I have a longer reach than you, so I don't think that's going to be a move that you can make." And he's like, "Okay." Well, he had told me, he's a pretty practiced mountain climber. He had said, "Hey, look, at all times you need to have 3 points of contact. Don't ever put all your weight in one stone." We're about 300 feet. Well, I would say actually we're about 280 feet up at this time. And I hear something, and I look over, and he said, "I'm falling." And what Travis had done was he had put all his weight on one stone. And they came out. It was a giant rock came out of the side of the wall, and it was on top of him, so he couldn't get back to the wall. There was too much weight on his chest, so he tried to get it over. But it was too late. He was too far. And he just let the rock go, but then he let go. And I watched that man fall 280 feet to the base of the mountain. I saw every form of agony that someone could probably feel on the way down, because it wasn't a straight fall. He hit things on the way. But it wasn't the fall that scared me. It was the screams from across the valley of my uncle and his best friend when he saw somebody fall. It was that sound that some of you have probably heard when somebody sees somebody that they love hurting, and they just have absolute agony. There's nothing they can do about it. And it was literally a half-mile projection. So I could hear it as if they were right next to me from a half a mile away. That was the part that scared me. So at the moment I had my hands like this, and then my foot was stuck in a little crevice to take some of the weight off of my wrists, my hands. But I knew I couldn't hold it, and I was watching. As I turned over, I saw Dustin, his best friend, running towards it, and I saw my uncle running towards us. And they had thought it was me because right before we had started climbing, I had a jacket on, and I gave it to Travis, and I only had a gray T-shirt on. So my uncle was screaming because he thought he just watched his nephew die, who he brought to this mountain to make him feel better. They got there. I was still there. I was just frozen. And I hadn't been afraid that whole time until I watched somebody fall to their death. Just instantly knew that he was gone. And my uncle shouted up to me. He said, "Don't move." And I shouted down to him. I was like, "If I don't move, I'm going to fall." if I don't get somewhere else, take a different grip, if I can't take some of the weight off of my hands, I can't hold it anymore. So I'll close my eyes, and everybody has these like Oprah Winfrey experiences, you know, where they're like, this happened, I close my eyes, and I don't know how it happened, but it happened. I close my eyes, and I promise you, the next thing I know, I'm 15 feet higher on this mountain. I brought this chair up for this. And I found a little piece of the mountain that was sticking out that I could fit about that much of myself onto. Just take a little bit of the weight off, and a little piece of rock that I could put my heel on to take some of the weight off of that. And then on both sides of me was a rock that was sticking out that I could put my hands on. But I couldn't put both my hands there because if I did, the lactic acid in my arms would build up so much that I couldn't have either arm. So I would hold one arm, shake out the other, switch, shake out the other. And they said they were going to call mountain rescue. Well, I don't know if you know, but there's no way for them to, if they had walked out there, they would have had to drive, and then they would have had to hike, and that would have taken them the 10 hours that it took us. And then they would have had to climb. And by the time they started to call them, it was already about 5 o'clock. It started to get dark, and I was on the side of a mountain without any wind, or without any jacket on, and the wind started to hit me, so hypothermia started to set in, and I started to not be able to feel my extremities, sorry. That was my wife making fun of me. And they said, they're going to be here in a few hours. And I was already feeling like I wasn't going to be able to feel the side of the mountain for a few more minutes. And so it was dark, I was cold, I was hopeless at this point. And I hadn't given up on staying alive as far as keeping myself alive as long as I could, but I had given up on being alive because the fact was I was going to die. If the fall didn't kill me, the cold was going to kill me. If the cold didn't kill me, my mind was going to kill me. Before it got dark, I remember looking out, and after the scream, there were no other sounds anymore. It was complete silence. I'm sure people were saying things, and there was nature sounds, but my mind couldn't comprehend sound anymore. So it was just utter silence, and my eyes at that time, when my ears stopped working, started working in overdrive. And I remember looking out, and I could see every single color of every leaf. I could watch the wind rippling, every shape of the clouds, the little meadow where we had been earlier when we were walking through, the yellows and the greens. And I was thinking to myself, man, God really cares about the details, because no one's really around to see this, but it's here. And usually I would be looking at the ceiling in that kind of situation and thinking, God, if you love me, why am I on the side of a mountain right now? But instead I was thinking, all right, God, I got to get good with you because I'm not going to be here much longer. And I started to talk to him, and I started to pray. But it wasn't like the answering machine prayer like it had always been, where I called and I left a message and he picked it up. He was right next to me. It's not that I could see him, but I could feel him, because when I was praying, I meant it. And I was saying, man, I've done some stupid stuff, you know? I've been really mad at you before. I've not believed in you before. I've denied you to people. I've laughed at other people who believed in you. But I was sitting there right now and I was like, I'm good. I just wanted to tell you before I go that I do believe in you. And I know that everything that's happened up to this point wasn't because you were angry at me. Wasn't because there was something wrong with me. There was some purpose. It's funny how when you get to that point of absolute acceptance of your death, that you don't have to deny it anymore, because then you already know. All the times that you're trying to push it out of your mind, because if I believe in God, I can't do that anymore. I can't have fun anymore. I can't do that. So we're pushing it out of our mind all the time. But when you're going to die anyway, you don't have to. It's just there, and you know it. I stayed in that position for another 7 hours probably. I couldn't feel my arms. Complete and total lactic acid, but it didn't matter. I couldn't feel anything. I was cold, I was shivering, but I was still somehow there. And then Mountain Rescue pulled up in a helicopter, and they landed. And I don't know what I expected, because I kind of thought they were going to have like a rope and fly above me, and I was going to grab it. But that's not how they save people on the side of a mountain. In case you guys ever find yourself on a mountain, that's not Indiana Jones. They climbed up the mountain in the dark, and the whole time they were thinking, man, I don't know how he climbed this. I'm hearing him speak. I don't know how they got this high. We have gear, and we're having trouble with this climb. And obviously it was dark, but I'm going to give myself the benefit of the doubt and say I'm awesome. But I got up there, and I want to say that it was probably because the whole time I didn't have any fear. And a lot of times I relate that to the same way that we make mistakes and the same way that we're reckless is because we don't have any fear and consequence. And a lot of times it's that flying too high to the sun that makes the wings melt and we crash and burn. So that was my flight to the sun. I was reckless and I didn't care. I had no fear, and I got too high and I was ready to fall. I see it all the time in people. They don't care. They're reckless. There aren't any consequences for me, and if there are any consequences, I don't care. When they finally got to me, they were talking about the fact that they might not be able to rescue me. They actually thought they didn't have enough rope, so they were going to give me a jacket and make me wait for another 5 or 6 hours until morning until they could get someone else there. I was like, nah, man, I'll just jump. But they tied an anchor to the rock up there. I mean, literally, they just tied a knot around a little rock, and that was what was supposed to sustain my weight. I just watched a guy grab one of those rocks and it fell out, so I didn't have a whole lot of trust in that. And they had exactly 300 feet of rope. Had I been another 5 feet up, I would have had to wait till morning. But the exact position which I was in, I was savable. They were able to rescue me. So they belayed me down. I went all the way down to the base of the mountain, and I landed next to Travis. And I saw everything that had happened to him. A lot of times, we will get to that point on a mountain, whether it's a drinking problem, or an addiction problem, or a self problem, a mental problem, something. We get to that point of the mountain, but God doesn't let you get 5 feet higher than that problem. So once I was ready to accept him and just tell him, I'm ready, I believe in you, 5 feet away from not being able to be saved, and he had just enough rope. Anything that any person in this room is dealing with is not above that part. It's not 5 feet higher, and it's not out of reach. It's just in reach. It's right there. There's enough rope for you to get down. A lot of times it just takes you. God, I know you're here. And I don't have anything to hide from you anymore. I'm with you, and I know you're with me. That's sometimes all it takes to bring us down from that side of the mountain. I remember getting to the base of that mountain. I didn't feel alive, but I knew there's got to be a reason. And so I looked up and I said, God, I know you love me. And I know you saved me. And I'm sorry that I ever questioned that. I went on from that day in that mountain, and I started serving at this church. I started getting plugged in. I started getting around the right people. And lo and behold, one day in that back corner right over by that little room in the back, one of the women sitting in this audience came up and hit me so hard for no reason at all. And it hurt a lot. And I married her. I didn't even know her. And she hit me. I was plugged in and I was being faithful to God. And then all the things that I would think at night when I was sitting in my bed, I'd look up at the ceiling. I'd be like, I know you loved me. Thank you. Thank you for bringing me here. Because when I got on my knees and I was in that little airport and I was praying, and I said, please bring me home. Kansas wasn't the home I was talking about. It was here. It was this home. And he's like, I will get you there. But you're going to have to face a lot of different stuff. You're going to have to face a lot of different adversity. And I like to think now that the reason that I dealt with an abusive father, the reason that I dealt with drug abuse, with gang violence, the reason that I dealt with heartbreak, the reason that I dealt with death was because God might have intended me to stand here on a Sunday night to talk to people here and tell them about my story so I could let them know there's always enough rope. You're never going to get too high.